Welcome back to the Manor, Entropians. Julian McBain here. And just doing another Qaffaz hunt, trying to burn through my Codex missions for Qaffaz, which is why I've been hunting them for so long. But you know how I work. I will grind at a target until the target cannot be ground no more. I just got a couple things I want to talk about tonight. This might end up being a shorter one, but before we get started, if you're new to the channel, welcome to the Manor. Please take a moment and subscribe down below. We are on the road to 13 million subscribers, one subscription at a time, so make sure you subscribe. Also, please consider going to patreon.com/JulianMcBain if you want to support my work. If you do, you will get access to The Modern Entropian, my ebook, and Personal Finance for Gamers, my other ebook, along with exclusive patrons-only content, which I am consistently trying to expand upon, and I really appreciate the support. I also want to totally shout out my current patrons, Spectrum 3900, Red Kryptonite, and Jay Lambertson, all three of which have supported me for quite some time, and I really appreciate that support. So, it's actually been kind of an interesting couple of days. I have been kind of reformulating how I live my life, and one of the things I wanted to focus on this year is in years past I had goals, and 2020 kind of upended that because there was literally nothing we could really do to achieve goals in 2020, not when it came to a lot of basic stuff, because most of my goals required me to be able to have access to people, which was kind of kiboshed, and I did not recover in time in order to pursue alternate goals or redirect myself on those goals to achieve them in a different way. 2020 was a nightmare. I'm sure everyone would probably agree with that. And unfortunately, I was not able to adapt fast enough, is what it comes down to. And so I kind of lost track of what I was doing. Things got a little bit, shaky, as it did for all of us, or many of us, during the year of COVID. The one major benefit I had is my regular job never stopped, because of what I do for work. We were able to quickly and agilely adapt, and we actually never closed at all. And so, even during the initial 2 to 4 week shutdown, we never closed. We're what's classified as an essential business. We don't face the public. We're able to redirect and kind of change the way we do things, and that actually resolved very, very quickly for us. So at least in that, I was very fortunate. I've got this fly buzzing around my head. But that doesn't mean it wasn't a rough year, because things like fencing got completely kiboshed. Events got kiboshed. The ability to go places got kiboshed. And so a whole bunch of things happened. So here's what I've decided to do. And I'm going to talk about this a little bit when I relaunch my podcast next week. I'm going to talk about themes. I picked up the idea of themes off CGP Grey. Grey is one of my favorite creators. You really ought to go check out some of his videos. Some of my favorites include the Rules for Rulers and Hexagons Are the Bestagons, which is freaking hilarious. I also love his So You Want to Be a Pirate series, because he's got it in 2 parts. One from the captain, one from the quartermaster, both of which are hilarious. So go check his channel out. The other one that I really like, and this is one I've actually been watching a lot of, is Charisma on Command. Now, a lot of you already know, and I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty of this, but I am an aspiring politician. I ran for office in the last election cycle. I've already announced that I will be running in for office again in the next election cycle at the state level. I'm here in Vermont. And so I've been trying to brush up on my skills, right? Learning body language, how to be effective with people who are in positions of power, things that I've never had to work with before or deal with. And I've dealt with people in all walks of life in the past. I've worked with people who didn't have a penny to their name, and we're trying to figure out how to squeeze them to Friday, and it's Tuesday. And I've had sitting U.S. senators at my desk in a previous job. So I've faced all types. I actually did an interview with a European prince once. That was really cool. But Prince Michael of Sealand. I did a correspondence interview with. So it wasn't like he was sitting across from me, but there's still certain things you have to keep in mind when dealing with royalty no matter what. So it's not like I'm totally unused to it, but this is the first time in my life where I've actually had state representatives calling me, like on the phone. That happened today. And for those of you watching on Wednesday, when I post this, this is Monday. When I'm making it, it was on an issue regarding the major issue was regarding like Airbnbs, but the other one I wanted to talk about was a blind squirrel. I literally talked to a representative for 15 minutes about a blind squirrel. So, and yes, that is an actual issue in Vermont. Welcome to the Green Mountain State. So, but there are ways you have to work with people differently when you're dealing with government and things of that nature. So I've been using the Charisma on Command videos to really help retrain myself on how to deal with people in different situations, keeping the right mindset, how to be confident when dealing with people who are way above my quote-unquote station, how to reframe things, all of that stuff. Really cool stuff. And I've actually found it helps, but you always need to remember your audience, because I was practicing some of the things, and a long-term customer who is very much a Vermont farmer got on the line, and the person I had spoken to previously is from Greenwich, Connecticut. So we're talking super ritzy area. And so I was doing all of the things that you would do when talking to someone who expects to be treated like freaking royalty, which people from Greenwich generally do. And I was talking to this Vermont farmer. He's like, dude, you got to loosen up. And I'm just like, oh, you're right. I'm so sorry. Know your audience, right? So that's been real interesting. It's been a lot of fun. Because what I will do is I will watch a video ad nauseum. And I don't do it just because I enjoy it. It's not like when I was, 8, watching Star Trek over and over because that was my favorite movie. I do it so that I can internalize what's being taught. It's like any lecture. If you listen to a lecture over and over and over, you're going to understand what's going on a lot better. Most people can't do that because they can't tape the lecture. And so what they do is they take notes and they review the notes. The issue with doing notes, especially when you only have one shot at the lecture, is you are going to miss key points, which is why people who maybe retake a class tend to do a lot better, because they're not just going through and getting the pieces. Oh, that was a really good loot. They're hearing points again and again. And so they'll have all their old notes and they'll have their new notes, and they can marry them together to form one more cohesive set of notes. And one of the reasons I really enjoy seeing some of the professors these days that are putting their lectures up online. I know that MIT has a number of their courses with lectures that have been taped online through OpenCourseWare. I know that Jordan Peterson has a bunch of his lectures up online. The best part about that is you can go back and you can review. And his students can go back and review and say, okay, this is the subject we were on. Let me watch it again. This lecture will be slightly different than the current one, but I'll get all of the key points. And that's the same with these videos. The videos on for Charisma on Command are like 15, 20 minutes long. The ones I'm watching right now all revolve around Game of Thrones, because you're, people in varying positions of power in different frames and quickly changing dynamics, which is politics 101, right? I mean, okay, in real life, the likelihood that the person that you're talking to is going to stab you by the end of the conversation is pretty small, but not unprecedented. Julius Caesar learned very quickly that he became the president. So I've been really enjoying that as I retrain myself. But I've really designated on the themes. I've designated this as the Year of Rebirth. I am in the process of remaking myself to be the person I truly want to be. And that is a tough thing to do. When you look at yourself and say, this is not where I wanted to be. And for most people, it's damned depressing. And in a lot of ways, for anyone, it's damned depressing. But if you can look yourself in the mirror and say, this is not where I wanted to be at this point in my life. What do I need to do to get there? And that was something that I really had to take a stark look at what I was doing. You know, it's March in 2021. My whole complete last year was completely obliterated by a number of factors between COVID, long-term relationship ended, grandmother passed away, the change of jobs that resulted in a loss of income. And it wasn't like I could keep the last one. The guy who owned the business retired, and the one downside to working for small businesses is when the owner goes away, so do the business. But I transitioned appropriately. I'm actually building myself up. I'm now the office manager in the new business, so I'm basically the number 2, which, okay, it doesn't mean much when there's only 5 of you, but still, it does mean I'm working on those things. You know, 4 years ago, I quit tobacco. 3 years ago. And that was good, and now I'm 4 days dry, which tells me I'm thankfully not an alcoholic, which was something that was really concerning me. I know that if there is alcohol in the house, but I have not been drinking it, if I had a problem, then I would be compelled to. So that makes me feel good. But I've noticed that because I've stopped, I'm waking up more sharply. I'm able to go to bed at a more reasonable hour, oddly enough. I'm sleeping better. These are all things that I wanted to see. And this is after only 4 days. So I'm going to keep on this track. I'm going to see where it goes. I'm going to go for 7 completely dry. I am drinking a hell of a lot more water. Or at least I'm noticing I'm drinking a lot more water. I'm pretty sure I drink that much water anyway. But I'm just healthier choices. Continuing to do my regular exercise, getting ready to move back into fencing as COVID starts to go by the wayside. Now that the vaccines are rolling out, production and provision of vaccines is increasing day after day. We're up to something like 1.4 million shots a day, I think. I know it's at least 1.1. It might be 1.4 here in the U.S. So that's all going well. The CDC just released some really good news that once everyone in a group is vaccinated, they no longer have to bother with social distancing or masks, which those of us who have worked in pandemic or have trained for pandemic conditions and have had to deal with infectious disease training pretty much knew that was going to be the case anyway. But this was a unique case, and we wanted to make sure that was the case, which it appears to be. So these are all good things, but it means rebuilding a lot of things that have been lost. Rebuilding friendships with people I haven't seen in a very long time, and social media is our only ability to see each other. Rebuilding connections. I gotta figure out how to date again. I don't even fucking know how anymore. And I'm not making that up. And no, I'm not looking for advice. It just, you know, in the middle of COVID, there's no desire or ability to go out. So you just don't. So being able to make those human connections is really, really important. And so that's all part of this, what I'm calling my Year of Rebirth, kind of rebuilding myself out of the ashes that was 2020. Like a phoenix, I shall rise. And so that's basically my theme is, hopefully by the end of the year, events will be happening again. I hope to do at least one tournament, get back into practices. I've started reading again, like actual reading books, not just listening to audiobooks. I'm currently reading The Prince by Niccolo Machiavelli, which, along with The Art of War, are 2 books that are always on my bedstand. They're in my headboard, but it's basically my bedstand. Those are 2 books that I think absolutely everyone should read. They both have critical information in them for life. And that's why they're on my bed. That's why they're on my bedstand, and that's why I read them each once a year. Last year might have been the exception. I know I read The Art of War. I don't remember if I read The Prince all the way through. I don't remember. Which is why I'm starting with The Prince this year. But I read The Art of War at least once per year. My son read a good chunk of The Art of War, and he was 12. So, getting back into reading books. Feeding my mind as much as I'm feeding my gullet. Bringing up that discipline. I'm waking up earlier. I'm getting up at 6:30 instead of 7 o'clock, where I've got to rush around in order to get ready for work. Which, it doesn't sound like half an hour makes a difference, but half an hour makes a difference. You know, eventually, I would probably like to cycle it back all the way to 6. I don't know if that's going to happen. One of the problems with living in different time zones is your body really likes living in a later time zone. Like, no joke, no messing around. If you move to Mountain Time, going back to Eastern Time is a bitch. Just going to Central Time is kind of a bitch, but you can kind of work it. It seems kind of early for a long time. Going back to Eastern Time is a bitch. Because when you go from Eastern to Mountain, you're waking up at 5 in the morning, and your body thinks it's 7, and it's the most awesome thing in the world. You're getting up, you're productive, it's awesome. Over time, you're like, well, I can sleep into 6, I can sleep into 7, and then you're used to Mountain Time. I think this is why people in the Pacific Coast are so laid back. And then you come back to the East, and you're like, bleh. I couldn't imagine moving to Europe from here. You'd be like, it's the middle of the night. What are you talking about? It's dinner time. No, it's not. Actually, it'd be breakfast, because they're before us. So yeah, that's my plan. To do a Year of Rebirth. And it's going to be a process, and there are going to be hiccups along the way. Now, do I think I will be 100% dry all year long? No. I might not even be without alcohol more than a week at a time for this particular time. I always take nights off throughout the year, but I am finding I like the difference in the morning. What's really killing me is it's a change in routine. I do not change my routine happily. And that change in routine is really fucked with my head. And I think that's actually the bigger problem I have. It's not the actual booze, it's the change in routine. Because at night, 9 o'clock rolls around, I put ice in the glass, I pour scotch over the glass of ice, and I just sip on it until it's time to go to bed. And that routine is what I settle into every single night. And changing that routine has to be drastic and abrupt, or it doesn't work, because that's the way I work. And this is something I've noticed in my son too. And the reason I notice it less because I'm like, oh yeah, that makes sense, because I'm like that. But as my mother and doctors tell me, that's not normal. This is not normal. It's like, oh yeah, I guess it wouldn't be normal, would it? And so just working with those alterations is also quite a challenge. And it's one that I need to take on. Be able to take on changes in routine. That is something I want to work on. Because those changes are hard for me. And being able to figure out how I can cope with those changes will help me help my son cope with those changes. I'd love to know what all of you are doing for this year. If you have goals, if you have a theme, if you have an idea of what you're doing, If you're just hoping to be able to get out of lockdown and go for a goddamn walk, maybe a date, you know, maybe go to a bar or a pub. That's one thing I miss. Unfortunately, my town does not have a good old-fashioned honest Irish pub. And I'm not just talking the alcohol. Like, in Bismarck, North Dakota, there's a place called Blarney Stone. And I rarely had alcohol when I was there. What I did have was their shepherd's pie. Their shepherd's pie was based on their Guinness Irish stew. So they make Irish beef stew with Guinness as the broth base, as like the stock, right? As part of the stock. And they crock pot the fucker. So it's going for days. Not for days, but for hours, right? So it's been stewing the way stew is meant to be made, slow cooked in the crock pot for 4 to 6 hours. And then they pour a portion of this into a literal cauldron, right? Not a huge one, a single serving cauldron. And they put mashed potato on it and some cheese, and they bake that fucker. And that thing comes out in a cast iron cauldron on the tray. And they hand you a fork and say, careful, it's hot. With a rustic bun. Oatmeal bun. And it is the mother of all comfort foods. I shit you not. Okay? I've never been able to replicate it. I don't know anyone who has been able to replicate it. I don't even have their goddamn stew recipe. I've never tried making stew in quite that manner. I probably should try at some point. But it is the definition of comfort food. And we don't have anything like that where I live, which really kind of makes me sad. You know, if I was stupid wealthy, I'd hop on a private jet just to go to frickin' Blarney Stone, which is one of the reasons I'm not wealthy enough to have a private jet. Because I do stupid shit like that. But, I mean, whatever your goals for this year, or whatever you plan on for this year, drop a comment. I'd love to know. You know, things are finally starting to open up. Things are starting to... We're finally seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. And I think we need to. I think we need to get ready to go back to real life. Because I know that I have some friends who are really nervous about going back to real life. To regular life. I shouldn't say real life. Regular life. Right? And to a certain extent, I can understand. Things have been shitty for a year. We've had to completely change everything, and changing back is going to be hard. And some of them even admit that the fear itself is not logical, but it's visceral. And in fact, one of the most intelligent people I know said that he understands that it's not logical why he's terrified of going back out in the public. And I get that. But we really need to be ready to do it when the time comes. The vaccine's rolling out. The CDC signed off on it. Things are going to return to normal. And I think we've got a lot of hope. I think we've got a lot of good things coming. Of course, we need to be agile, as agile as we can be, because things can change. But I am very, very optimistic. So you let me know what your themes are. I know what my theme is. You all have a great night. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Please like, share, and subscribe down below. We are on the road to 13 million subscribers, one subscription at a time, so make sure you subscribe. And as always, I appreciate your support. Sorry it's a bit short, but that's okay, and we'll see you in the next one.